Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. I'm Jose Alvarez. I'm a member of the UCLG policy team, and it's my pleasure again to introduce you to the final session of these VLR VSR days on participation and social inclusion in VLR and VSR processes. Before we go any further, let me remind you that we have interpretation in French, Spanish, and English at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Before we start, allow me to thank once again all of those of you who have been following these last 3 days, and especially to those local, regional, and national representatives that shared their experience and their knowledge these last 3 days. I'd also like to thank my colleagues and co-workers from UN Habitat for their commitment to these days and to subnational localization. Today's session, the last one, but not the least, in the framework of the VLR VSR days, will allow us to showcase all of those stakeholders working in VLRs and VSRs, their best practices throughout the different stages of the process. We are very much looking forward to sharing the process and the results of their participatory processes. And I'm sure that the experiences shared here will be enriched by the experiences shared before. Without any further ado, let me introduce the opening speakers for today's session. First, Ms. Shipra Narangsuri, Chief of the Urban Practices Branch of UN Habitat. Shipra, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Jose. Oh my God, what 2 weeks this has been, and what a phenomenal first edition of the VLR VSR days. So, colleagues, partners, friends, instead of saying hello, I should just say congratulations. This has been a phenomenal period, a phenomenal mobilization, and thank you for being with us today at the end of this first edition of the VLR VSR days. The high-level political forum has been extremely special this year, and I think a major reason for that is that localization is at the heart of it. We always used to have the local and regional governments forum. We always used to have a session on local 2030. We always had these debates, some small VLR labs, and we always had some launches of voluntary local reviews. But localization was never so central in this whole conversation, which is fundamentally a member states platform. The high-level political forum, as you know, is a platform where member states come and share progress on the sustainable development goals. So this was a platform that was meant for national governments, but this year has been taken by storm by this entire localization agenda. And in all the discussions, in all the debates, we have talked about rebuilding our societies post-pandemic in this crisis stage from the bottom up. We have also talked about the role of cities and local governments, as has been amplified like never before over the last 18 months as frontliners, whether in the health response, whether in containment, whether in post-pandemic recovery, but also in terms of achieving the sustainable development goals. So these two elements of rebuilding from the bottom up and rebuilding with local and regional governments in the lead have come out very, very strongly in this period. Along with the localization discussion, or maybe as part of the localization discussion, it became very clear that voluntary local and subnational reviews are gaining traction, becoming more and more important in the local governments and stakeholders' visions and actions towards localizing the SDGs. And of course, at Habitat, we are very, very happy about it. We are happy because both VLRs and VSRs are, for us, powerful accelerators of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have only 9 years left to achieve the SDGs. It's tomorrow, actually. And we need some accelerators. We need some drivers to really put us on the right path. These are the accelerators we need to boost our work in these 9 years if we are to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. What has also emerged quite clearly in the process is that the inclusion of communities, the inclusion of a diverse range of stakeholders, the inclusion of groups and people who traditionally have not had a voice in decision making is also fundamental for the achievement of the SDGs, not only to ensure a recovery process, but also to ensure that that recovery process is people-centered. That recovery process is not business as usual. That recovery process puts us on a different path for the future than we have been in the past. And if we need to do that, then we really need to have a much more inclusive, much more engaged process. Voluntary local reviews and voluntary subnational reviews that we have seen, we have studied, we have explored, we have developed with our partners, have enormous potential to bring vulnerable communities and traditionally excluded groups in these conversations, not just in terms of bringing them to the table, but also empowering them to be able to influence the discussions that go on to the table. They are two different things. Having a seat at the table versus influencing decision making in a substantial way while you're at the table are two different things. And the VLRs have become that instrument which can really bring these people to bring communities and stakeholders to the table, but also give them the tools, the instruments, the voices, the data, the power to influence policy interventions, to influence plans, to influence projects, and to influence investments. Both VLRs and VSRs in our experience provide very important links between local and national policy making. uh, it's not just the local level which can achieve everything on its own, which can drive the SDGs forward on its own, nor is it only the national level which can drive the SDGs forward on its own. What is that link between these national and local policy making processes, and how can that link be enhanced? How can local governance processes become more inclusive, more transparent, more accessible, more accountable, but at the same time more influential towards national policy? And vice versa, how can national policy be drilled down to the local level and become more accountable to the needs of a much larger group of people? So for us, it's very, very important that VLRs and VSRs provide a genuine representation of the diversity of their territory, because sustainable development goals resonate and reflect in different ways in different contexts. They are universal goals, but they have to be contextualized for their implementation. Different cultural characteristics, different societal characteristics, different traditions, different forms of governance, different local knowledge. It does not come to light in a voluntary national review or any national review the way it can come to light through local and subnational reviews. The nuance, the richness, the disaggregation that a local and subnational review can offer cannot be captured in a nationwide review, however small or big that nation might be. So for us, VLRs and VSRs can really help foster that commitment from the top down and the bottom up to the SDGs and the 2030 agenda. They can elicit highly localized and original and context specific approaches that build on people's engagement and their communities to catalyze the demand for sustainable change, to catalyze action for sustainable change. It's what we call the whole of society approach. It's not just a whole of government approach, it's a whole of society approach. Through a whole of society approach, SDGs can change the dynamic of governance. They can advance not just, we can advance not just on the goals and the targets themselves, but we can change the nature of the relationship between different spheres of government, which we're calling effective multi-level governance mechanisms. Effective multi-level governance that stretches from the international level, which we forget sometimes, the United Nations and the whole multilateral system, to the regional level, to country level, to regions within countries, to the local level, and absolutely down to the communities. That is the process of co-ownership and the whole of society process that VLRs and VSRs are advancing. And these bottom up methods have brought in civil servants, they've brought in experts, researchers, citizens, activist groups, interest groups, grassroots organizations to contribute their ideas and to bring in their very unique and very important perspectives. And that's what I hope we will be able to explore um, in today's session. It's as Jose said, it's one of the final sessions, or maybe the final session of our VLR VSR days, but perhaps fittingly so, because a crescendo has been building up, and this is really the climax, the most important moment of that crescendo. if we do not make this process inclusive, if we do not provide people with the instruments to influence policy, plans, investments, and projects to change the course of their lives, then we are doing a huge disservice, and we are not going to achieve the SDGs. So with those brief remarks, thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to learning from each one of your examples and each one of your cases on how we can enhance and deepen social inclusion in the VLR, VSR process to leave no one behind. Thank you. And back to you, Jose.
Thank you very much, Shipra. As you said, this is the final session, but it's incredibly important to include all perspectives, to include all communities when launching monitoring processes, and it's the only way that we can achieve the SDGs. Out of your remarks, I think the three words that you use, nuance, richness, and disaggregation, are critical to foster commitment, to enhance ownership of the SDGs at the local level. Thank you very much. Um, Now I have the pleasure to introduce my colleague Amanda Fletti, who is the coordinator of the UCLG Committee on Social Inclusion, Participatory Democracy and Human Rights. Amanda, over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Jose. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Um, we have been working a lot and for a long time on the priority of the social inclusion agenda. And for us, it's very important that we can advance on this discussion. UCLG was one of the first international network to commit with this approach of inclusive cities, of adopting the right to the city approach, recognizing the social function of the cities, acknowledging also the importance to put the needs of people at the heart of local agendas, and also of the co-creation, the importance of having a civil society working with local government, working with national government, to try to really improve the response to inequalities and to the social challenges. And UCLG committed also to bring all these experiences, knowledge of local government at the international level, to the international discussion, into the international agendas. And I think that what we are seeing now with the current pandemic is showcasing how much we were right to bring this conversation to the table. We have seen how it has been important to have local government implementing social policies to try to fight inequalities, and has been instrumental to respond to the challenges created by the pandemic, and also to respond to the consequences that we are facing now. So I think that since Habitat 3 and the adoption also of the New Urban Agenda, we started building this relationship of local governments with the international level on this responsibility from the local level to the international level. And as Shipra was mentioning, the importance of having this top-down and bottom-up mechanism, and VLR in this sense are relevant tools to build this relationship that we want to have, and build this pact of mixing stakeholders to advance and to fight inequalities and to respond to the social challenges that we are facing currently. I think that's also what we could mention here, maybe an introduction to this session, is all what we have seen during this year as a response of the pandemic also. We have seen the importance of the choices made by local government, the impact they have on the everyday life of the citizens, of the quality of life of the citizens. I'm thinking, for example, of the cities who were having local institutions to respond to violence against women, were able to respond better to all the domestic violence that we seen during the lockdown measures. I'm thinking about the cities of Mexico, for example, who were also able to develop a food response thanks to their facilities they had, the canteens facilities they had at the local level. I'm thinking about the cities who have been working with migrants over the past year, and who are also able to provide some adequate responses during the pandemic for migrant people, providing shelter, information. For example, the city of Vienna had developed the website on more than 13 languages. So at the time to be informed, migrants could be could have access to the information thanks to the translation of the different services. I'm also thinking about the local system of healthcare, led, for example, by the city of Nanterre, who was also able to respond and to provide health responses to their inhabitants. All these examples are showcasing that this attention paid to vulnerable groups over the past year has helped local government to face the current crisis, but also is providing an idea on how we should build the recovery plans. And maybe one of the main outcomes that we have been seeing during the last year is that more than ever, LRGs are willing to put care and social inclusion at the heart of local service provision, building also these common principles among their citizens and protecting rights for all from a local perspective. These efforts of social innovation that we're seeing and transformative action led by local and regional governments are often in partnership with civil society organizations. And they need to be better supported and highlighted in link with the realization of the SDGs. In this sense, again, VLR are this tool of visibilization that we need and showcasing how we can build together this common agenda. I would finally like to share with you also current work we are doing at UCLG to analyze the drivers and mainstreams of inequality. That is for us kind of a next step in the discussion on how to respond to to the challenges of social inclusion. And indeed, we hope to maybe more than building back better, to build forward fairer. And we hope that collaboration between the UN and the local governments will be instrumental to achieving these recovery plans inspired by a rights-based approach and by the implementation of the SDGs. Let's hope that it would be the opportunity to bring human rights home and make them concrete to the inhabitants. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for the amazing insights from the cities of Mexico City, Vienna, Nanterre, and others, who are demonstrating that building with communities, that integrating local aspects, and of course that working with human rights at the center is essential for transformation, and it's the only way that we can achieve the SDGs. I think that it's absolutely necessary as we move forward, as you said, to develop cities that care and to develop a system that cares for its communities in order to build back fairer. So now allow me to give the floor to Angela Mwai, who is, I hope I haven't butchered your name, Chief of Human Rights and Social Inclusion Unit of UN Habitat, who will moderate the next part of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that honor and privilege. I have 5 fantastic panelists, and we have I expect we have a very good and fruitful discussion. So I'm going to start with the first one. That is Laura Kam, who is Hawaii's Green Growth Network Manager, and she supports the Partnership Statewide Network meetings and events and strategic initiatives. Laura, you have the floor.
Thank you, Angela. Colleagues, oh, great. Aloha, and thank you for the invitation to share about Hawaii's experience in pioneering the first statewide voluntary local review, which builds on over 6 years of data on the Aloha Plus Challenge, Hawaii's sustainability commitment for 2030 and framework to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Delivered last year, Hawaii's voluntary local review assesses progress to date and provides 2020 benchmark data to inform decision-making, including on the economic recovery from COVID-19 through the Aloha Plus Challenge. The VLR was produced by the Hawaii Local 2030 Hub in collaboration with local network partners from across government, business, and civil society sectors. Our network is comprised of over 150 public and private partners, institutions, and individuals committed to stewarding Hawaii's precious natural, cultural, and human resources by advancing economic, social, and environmental goals. Our genealogy is rooted in the 2011 APEC Leaders Summit hosted here in Hawaii, with its recognition of the need for a green growth economic recovery emerging from the 2008 financial crisis. This is an important point as we find ourselves in the middle of another social and economic crisis, where we need to build back more sustainably, equitably, and resiliently. So in 2014, Hawaii Green Growth as a network launched the Aloha Plus Challenge, which is Hawaii's statewide 2030 sustainability commitment to 6 priority areas: clean energy, local food, waste reduction, natural resource management, smart sustainable communities, and green workforce and education. The Aloha Plus Challenge is led by the governor and all county mayors, and it builds on a legacy of Hawaiian system thinking and values, recognizing that sustainability is not a new concept. May I move to the next slide? So Hawaii measures progress on the Aloha Plus Challenge through the online Aloha Plus dashboard. The dashboard tracks data in real time and informs us whether or not we're on the right track to achieving our local and global goals. Next slide, please. The dashboard was developed through a 4-year multi-stakeholder convening process, which involved every county to determine which metrics and indicators matter to our community. So now, with over 6 years of data, the dashboard tracks Hawaii's contribution to all 17 SDGs through 37 targets and over 200 community-based indicators. It includes government, business, and community data. It also features COVID-19 data, resilience and response efforts, and a green growth project list. The statewide dashboard has further been localized to county-specific dashboards, where community members can input their sustainable actions and data can be collected that rolls up to the SDGs. Due to the network's efforts, we were recognized in 2018 as a Local 2030 hub within the Local 2030 Coalition. The intention to conduct a Hawaii voluntary local review was announced at the July 2019 U.S. Conference of Mayors hosted in Honolulu and launched with a statewide stakeholder input session at the Hawaii Local 2030 Hub annual partnership event, followed by consultations with experts from across sectors. The report covers 6 years of data on the Aloha Plus Challenge based on the metrics co-developed on the Aloha Plus dashboard. May I move to the next slide? Students and citizens also contributed to the Hawaii Voluntary Local Review by participating in Volunteer Week Hawaii, the state's largest volunteer campaign, which compiled volunteer hours and impact metrics by communities towards the goals. In releasing the first statewide voluntary local review, Hawaii was proud to join other leading cities and subnational jurisdictions around the world in reporting on progress and identifying areas where we need to increase ambition to close the gap during this decade of action. Thank you again for the opportunity to share Hawaii's experience with you today.
Thank you very much, Laura. I just wanted to challenge you a little bit and ask you maybe to highlight how you've been able to integrate most of the communities that you've worked with, and if you were to do it next time, what would you do better? What would you do different? Over.
Yes, thank you. That's a fantastic question. We have mostly been able to integrate data from the community using the hyper-localized county-specific dashboards. And so community members are able to sign various actions that they do for sustainability when they, for example, increase energy efficiency, or they decide to take multimodal transportation. They can input that data into the county-specific dashboard, which then collects data to roll into our statewide dashboard. I would say if we were able to do it again, one thing that we've always had an issue with is communicating the Aloha Plus Challenge and the dashboard to our communities. And so we're not able to really impact that large scale behavior change that we were hoping to do and drive action through the dashboard. So I would say to probably release our voluntary local review and then, or in the process of releasing our voluntary local review to do a communications campaign to try to get as much people involved as possible, and getting them to download the county-specific dashboards and input their own data.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. And thank you for sharing the
Angela, sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. I apologize. Thank you for sharing the Hawaii Aloha Challenge dashboard and how you're using it there. And I think we can all learn from you. And, you know, we can always do things better if we review and critique ourselves as we go along. So thank you very much for sharing. My next speaker will be Alan McLeod, who worked at the University of Bristol, Bristol City Office and Bristol City Council as a person responsible for the UN Sustainable Development Goals to assist in their adoption, as well as stakeholders from across Bristol to improve awareness and understanding of the SDGs. Alan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm going to be touching on our One City approach, which is our way of engaging stakeholders and how we were active in ensuring that we had social participation throughout our VLR process. But it's also a governance framework that we use to ensure, as has already been mentioned, we take a whole of society approach to delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals. And also, it's been really central to our COVID recovery work. If you go to the next slide, please. So the One City approach, as we call it in Bristol, is about aligning activity in our city to a long-term vision for Bristol. We worked and have been working since 2016 to create this vision and to create the structures around it. And that vision is that by 2050, Bristol will be a fair, healthy and sustainable city, a city of hope and aspiration where everyone can share in its success. And this means that all the strategies and structures and actions of organizations within Bristol are aligned towards that vision. It means that we're working in a holistic way that is integrated and takes a whole of society approach. We need to try and encourage organizations in our cities to think outside their own spheres of influence and to consider how the decisions they make have implications on other issues. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to ensure that fairness, health, sustainability and inclusion are embedded in everything we do. And during the COVID pandemic, this has been something that's been incredibly essential. Our Director of Public Health for the city said that if we didn't have a One City approach and a One City model, we would have needed to create it to ensure that we had as big an impact as we've had and have been able to throughout the pandemic. And it has meant a variety of things, like being able to ensure our schools have access to the information they need about testing, being able to ensure that the buses know how to run while we've been having different closures for businesses and for schools and different timetables in all of that, and also being able to put on nice events for citizens, including live streaming things like our pantomimes in healthcare centres and in social care centres, which were previously isolated throughout the pandemic. If you could go to the next slide, please. So in practice, this looks like a series of boards that sit underneath that One City vision and contribute to it. Each of the boards that you can see on the screen are Children and Young People's Board, Economy and Skills, Environment, Health and Wellbeing, Homes and Communities, and Transport boards, all contribute to that long-term vision. And they are all made up of a subsection of actors and stakeholders from across the city, both communities and businesses. And that helps us to ensure that we have organizations feeding into the processes of the city and feeding into the decision making of the city, as well as supporting the delivery of our ambitions, all of which is underpinned by that set of Sustainable Development Goal targets that we have for 2030, as well as some longer term ones towards 2050. Next slide, please. Alongside that, for Bristol, we have the Sustainable Development Goals Alliance. If you could click through so that all the text comes on, please. The Sustainable Development Goals Alliance is a focused organization that meets every 6 to 8 weeks to discuss how we can deliver the SDGs in Bristol. It's a network of over 170 member organizations that represents all of society, including civil society, private sector and business, public sector, and academia. And it brings together organizations so that they can align what they're doing and so that our conversations can happen at the same time, and we can ensure that everything that we're doing in Bristol contributes to the delivery of the SDGs. And it has been a key advocacy tool to demonstrate how we are delivering on the SDGs, but also how we could go further. Next slide, please. The SDG Alliance is made up, as I said, of over 170 members, and these include some of our key social networks within the city, like Bristol Women's Voice and the Black Southwest Network, the African Voices Forum, some of our neighborhood community institutes, Triodos Bank, and others like Arup and Angine and Business West, our Chamber of Commerce, amongst others. And these have been key for our engagement throughout the VLR process. Next slide, please. And as a result, what we wanted to do was reflect this citywide activity in our voluntary local review. We had the representation from over 90 organizations in our VLR, from small community groups all the way up to some of the largest businesses. And that whole of society approach was adopted using the networks within the City Office and the SDG Alliance. And those networks are still key now for our work across the city and for our continued communication and delivery on the SDGs. We consulted with local councillors, elected officials as well, to make sure that community voices were heard in our VLR. And we've reached out with a targeted approach to ensure that economic, social, and environmental issues were equally reflected across the report. And this work is now continuing with both universities supporting it, with extra student support to undertake case studies of activity from organizations that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to produce their own case studies. Next slide, please. This is just a reflection, lastly, of some of the activities within our voluntary local review, and the breakdown of how different actions were recorded in our VLR. So it's a percentage of the different examples in our voluntary local review and what activity is happening. And it shows a good mix across the board. And actually it shows that in many cases, the social side of things, issues like well-being and education and gender equality and reduced inequalities are really key within what we're doing. But what we've worked on since then is ensuring that some of our communication around climate change and environmental issues are key. And that's one of the priorities we're working on this year, with a series of community videos, one on each sustainable development goal, and a series of street art murals across the city. Next slide. Thank you very much for your time and for listening, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Alan. And I was very happy to hear about your One City approach. And I have a question for you, because I didn't hear you say anything. You talked about children and youth, your children and young people board. Have you considered other groups such as people with disabilities, older persons in your have you considered people with disabilities and older persons as part of your constituency?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
I didn't see them on the list, so I wondered whether you had done so.
We have a set of other forums that we call city advisory forums. And so that includes Disability Forum and Bristol Older People's Forum, the Commission on Race Equality. We also have a forum for climate change experts as well, to feed into the One City approach. So we have a Bristol Advisory Committee on Climate Change, as well as a Special Education Needs Forum, and many others that we work with to ensure, for example, the Bristol Women's Commission, to ensure that the variety and the range of voices across all of society are reflected in what we're doing within the One City structure.
That's fantastic, Alan. And I really like that city of hope and aspiration for the communities. I think that's what we all aspire for in the development. So thank you very much for your fantastic presentation. So my third speaker is Christian Hubel, who has been the head of strategic management department of the city of Minehead since 2010, and is responsible for the overall management of urban activities. Christian manages the implementation of SDGs and is organizing the Mannheim 2030 process. Christian, welcome, and you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. First of all, best wishes for you and greetings to all the participants from the mayor of Mannheim, but also from the citizens of Mannheim, because we just finished the second day of our Urban Thinkers Campus from the World Urban Campaign, which is a big participation process for achieving the local Green Deal. So thank you for the invitation and talking about leaving no one behind. Yeah, always when we are making participation, we are looking how to get as many as involved as possible and how to not leave someone behind. And for us, our basis or our DNA is the so-called Mannheim Declaration. This was made and signed about 5 years ago when there was a lot of tension in the city because of religious struggles. And then the mayor put all people together, or religious people, or people from the civil society. They were talking on a round table, and then they were saying, okay, to be living together, we need a declaration. And then they were signing a declaration that they're saying, no matter what sex, what gender, what religious, or whatever we're coming from, we are all living together in peace and coexistence. We are respecting each other, and we are looking together for a common and joint action for the city. And 5 years after that, over 350 organizations or religious movements have signed this declaration, and this is a kind of a DNA for us when we are talking leaving no one behind, and how we can integrate and participate always when we are making participation process. Yeah, in the kind of the VLR and the creating of the Mannheim mission statement, we were also looking how to get everybody involved. And then we see a first big hinder or obstacle for a lot of people was the language. So when we are talking in a diverse city where people from 170 nations are living here, we have to say it's not only a discussion in German, it's also a discussion in other languages like Turkish or Romania or Spanish. And so we were always talking also in other languages with the people, so that the people are saying, okay, I can follow this discussion and I'm respected, because at the moment I'm not able to participate in a discussion in German. So perhaps let's take it in our own language. We also were looking about choosing people for participation processes by a lottery, that we are saying we are not only sending out invitations, but we are saying, okay, the mayor is going to the statistical unit, and then we are saying, okay, we want to have randomly chosen 100 people from the city, and then they get a personal invitation from the mayor. And so more people are coming which have never go to a participation process before. And we also saw more diversity of the people who were discussing there. And the other thing was, it was a very constructive discussion, because the people who are coming were not stick in their silo that they're saying, I got a thing, I know how to do it, and now I'm going into this discussion and I have to convince everybody. The people who were invited usually have a very open-minded point of view, and it was very constructive. And so the participation with people chosen by a lottery is now a kind of a standard format which we have in several participation processes. The other thing was that we are saying we are not only inviting the people, we are always also looking for where the people are. And this means going onto the streets, going to a Christmas market, but also going to the New Year's reception and saying, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about the Sustainable Development Goals? What do you think about what we have achieved in the last 1 or 2 years? This is a thing that we're saying we have to go to the people, not wait till the people come to us. And so we have to go where the people still are. And this is usually in the pedestrian zone or at the markets. The other thing is that we saw that we sometimes have to try new things, innovative things. And for instance, for implementing the SDGs and talking about VLRs, we made a photo box where everybody was able to get a photo with him and his favorite SDGs, and he get a print, but he was also he could also share it directly via social media, via Facebook or via Instagram. And so the people get very easily in touch with the theme, and then they raising awareness. They're saying, okay, let's talk a little bit more about it. And so we got them involved step by step in this process. And other very successful thing was that we are going to look for people who were such called cultural agents, that we're saying it's not only the city administration, like me, white boy, it's also people from the communities and from the quarters, that they are saying, hey, it's a good thing, come and participate with us and bring in your point of view to create a better vision of the city. And so in a whole, we are always trying to get the people diversely involved. We are going directly to the people, and we are looking for cultural agents, new formats. And in this thing, we were rising the participation and the representative citizenship in our participation process a lot. Because usually 5 years ago, only people who are well educated were coming to these participation processes. But we are a city with, at the moment, 40% people with a migration background. And so we have to look for new formats for the language, but also for cultural agents. And at the moment, we are successful with this. And we are always looking for bringing them in and also discussing such things like and VLR next year with them, that they say, okay, we have created a vision together and now you can see what we've made of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. And really the Mannheim Declaration is, it really talks about living together in peace and harmony. And I think that's what all cities need to strive for. And I do really like the fact that you talked about being more inclusive from a language perspective, because for sure, language can be very inclusive. But I have one question for you. Children, younger people who are still in institutions of learning, how did you try to include them? Because I heard you went to markets, you went to private sector, but I didn't hear how you got the ideas of younger people in the process. Please, can you tell us? Thank you.
Yeah. At the moment, when we are talking about younger people, we divide the younger people into two groups, in the very young people. And there we have a playful participation process where we say, please, with Lego, create your own city. And then they will say, okay, how I wish my city should look like. And you see a lot of green, you see a lot of playground, whatever. And then we have this model, and we put this model into the process for the councillors. And we are saying, hey, this is the language of the little children. They want to create this kind of vision of the city. Please make something out of it. The other thing is for the elderly, for about 12 to 18 years, we have several formats and also one big council meeting with these young people every year. And the next one is in the next week also on the local Green Deal, because we try to harmonize the several decision making with the councillors, also with the participation process with the younger people, so that we're bringing all in together. And so we have all kind of views in this decision process.
Thank you very much for that. And I really like how you choose by lottery. I think that is a very fair way of doing it, because you avoid landmines when you say it's an open lottery and, you know, may the best man win. So thank you very much for sharing that idea. And I hope other cities can take that up. Thank you very much, Christian.
Thank you, Angela.
So, second last speaker will be Louise Science. I hope I don't butcher the name. National Coordinator. Red, you'll have to excuse me, I'm not so good in Spanish. Cuidades, como vamos, from Colombia. Luis is a specialist in sustainable urban development with experience in social housing, mobility, public space, urban sustainability, urban and regional planning projects, working for organizations in public, private, academic, and social sectors. So I think you'll have a lot to tell us about the VLR's process there. You have the floor, Luis.
Angela, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the organizers for this kind invitation, and greetings to my fellow panelists. I'm going to share, I guess, in a very different position and from a very different perspective, the work that the Como Vamos Cities Network has been doing in Colombia over the last couple of years, and different to my previous fellow speakers, because we are a network that engages in different ways with cities to promote SDG localizations, and we're basically preparing ourselves and in putting together a strategy to mobilize cities in Colombia for VLR. So listening to Bristol, to Hawaii, to Mayhem is very interesting and very valuable to learn from their experiences in order to launch social and participatory VLR institutionalization process in Colombia. Next slide, please. I'm gonna briefly mention what the Como Vamos Cities Network is. We are a private and civil society partnership focused on the generation of reliable, comparable, and trustworthy city-level data in Colombia. We gather 21 Como Vamos, or how are we doing programs that basically monitor and evaluate quality of life and sustainability in Colombian cities. We do this to contribute to the development of more effective and open local governments and better informed, accountable, and participatory citizenships in these cities. The network is created by joint interest from multiple stakeholders, from private sector to academia to civil society organizations that create each Como Vamos, or each How Are We Doing program in the cities in Colombia, to engage with the government in order to promote, again, quality of life, open government principles, and sustainability. Next. Our work is mainly framed under the SDGs, and we've been working in SDG localization for the last couple of years. Our general framework is called the 5 urban challenges that, as you can see, are clearly related to the SDGs, and that together with local communities, private sector organizations, we came up with this idea of integrating and connecting the different SDGs in order to find common problems and common challenges in Colombian cities. Next. Colombia, as some of you may know, has been one of the main and leading countries in Latin America to promote and implement SDGs. We have quite an enabling environment for localization, but definitely we have some challenges. And I'm going to mention two of these challenges in which we have focused and we are engaging with cities. One is the fact that we have local data deficits and challenges to make more informed and inclusive decisions in our planning processes. And that multi-stakeholder approach has been promoted, but it's not sufficient enough. So we've chosen these two challenges to create a localization strategy to help cities promote a localization effort that guarantees better decision making on the one hand, and then more inclusive and participatory processes on the other, basically using VLRs as a platform for this. Next. Very briefly on the local data side, we created a target localization SDG target tool to help cities plan to 2030 using local data, and to offer other stakeholders like private sector, like communities, a tool that enables them to track and to understand how the city is doing, or how are we doing towards the implementation of the SDGs. We partnered up a couple of years ago with SDSN, and this tool has been very useful for our work and others to engage in conversations and dialogue with cities working towards localization. Next. And precisely on VLRs, we, a couple of years ago, together with the National Planning Department of Colombia and the UN and the UNDP, we've designed and we're about to launch a guideline for VLRs in Colombia cities, since we believe that this is going to be a great opportunity to institutionalize not only the VLRs as a tool, as an engagement tool and as a tool for localization, but also as a way clearly to promote and create awareness towards SDG localization. The guideline is mainly based and gathers a lot of information from other cities' experiences, and we've mainly focused not only on guaranteeing this local data deficit attention that I mentioned before, and the tool that I mentioned, but also on guaranteeing that the VLR processes that different cities in Colombia are going to start hopefully doing is carried out through an inclusive and participatory process. And we hope also to institutionalize spaces and scenarios of dialogue between cities that can change and share, exchange and share experiences, but also engaging with different actors in order to create an ecosystem of skill share and SDG localization experience engagement. Colombia, as I mentioned, is starting its process of VLR implementation. There are 2 cities that in the next couple of years will be basically talking about and developing their VLRs. On the one hand, we have our capital city, Bogota, that will be presenting the VLR next year. And then there's the city of Manizales, an intermediate city that we're also working with that will be launching its VLR this year. What we hope to attain with these 2 processes is that the VLR process is mainly done through participatory and inclusive processes, and that both Bogota and Manizales can work as champions together with the UNDP, with the National Planning Department, with the Como Vamos network, in order to raise awareness and promote, again, voluntary local report processes together with communities, with different actors, engaging with the different Como Vamos programs that, as I mentioned in my first slide, unite different actors like private sector, civil society. So for us in Colombia, is a great experience to learn from other cities across the world. And we hope that this VLR movement that we're starting to plan clearly develops and bases its principles in this social inclusion and participatory principles that the general VLR global movement is promoting. Next slide. And I think that's it. No, just if you want to learn more about our work, you can reach us in redcomovamos.org and you can learn about our work in Colombia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luis, for sharing with us your process on Como Vamos Cities Network. I just wanted to ask you one question. We came for One Habitat 3 meeting in Medellin, and I just wonder whether Medellin has had the appetite to start a VLR process for, linking up our work that we did there. But what would you say is an opportunity? You mentioned 2 challenges. What do you see as an opportunity that you would like to see going forward for the VLR, using the VLR process?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, definitely, I mentioned Bogota and Manizales because they have committed to the VLR, which is very important. But I'm sure, and we're working as a network with other actors to promote that other cities like Medellin, like Barranquilla, and many other actually deliver VLRs in the next couple of years. We're basically preparing the ground with this guideline in order for cities to have like a clear way, a clear path on how to develop VLRs. I think, as I mentioned, Colombia has been one of the pioneer countries in SDG implementation, but the big opportunity that we see with the VLRs is that it's definitely a way not only to report and engage with SDGs, but actually to create and to use the VLR as a mechanism to connect, to create a participatory process with other actors in order to guarantee that the localization effort is not done only via the subnational governments, but actually together with other actors. So the VLR offers a great opportunity actually to create these dialogue, to create these participatory mechanisms. We've heard from Bogota that they're that they are committed to develop a VLR and present a VLR next year that is mainly done through participatory processes engaging with different actors. Manizales is doing a similar process. And again, we see and we believe that the VLRs are a great tool to guarantee that localization efforts in Colombia are carried out together with different actors. So we're hopeful that this guideline and the work that we are doing and other experiences like the ones we've heard can definitely set a positive ground here in Colombia.
Thank you very much. And I wish you all the best as you go forward with this process. So we have come to our last speaker. Our last speaker is Anna Koledova. She's an urban development practitioner specializing in the VLR process. She works with us. She's passionate about behavior change initiatives as an approach to accelerate transition towards sustainable solutions. Anna, you have the floor.
Thanks so much. Hello, colleagues. I'm very pleased to be part of this panel, especially so that we have just finished hard work on making the first VLR for Moscow. And I would like to share some details about the importance of the participatory process in the production of that VLR. So I would like to start from saying that our team has decided from the very beginning that we don't want the first Moscow VLR to look like a mere statistic analysis document. Instead, we will try and give it the human face. We will do so by using elements like success stories from local institutions, best practices from local businesses, quotes from local people, and of course, unique urban data on local territories. This is all to try and show how the process of sustainable development and SDG localization resonates with the city from the bottom up. And this can only be achieved by a very well-developed participatory strategy. So what was that strategy for Moscow? It aimed at aligning Moscow strategies and projects to the SDGs framework and identifying relevant local data. It initiated a broad discussion on sustainable development. It also tried to define an aspirational vision for Moscow going 2030 in coordination with all relevant stakeholders. And what about those stakeholders, who they were? So the selection process was very selective from start. We checked and mapped all the options against the UN principle of leaving no one behind. And we had a special focus, of course, on the SDG 11, since the VLR for Moscow has been done in partnership with UN Habitat and Moscow Urban Forum. So the final list of stakeholders comprised of Moscow residents, city departments, private sector companies, non-for-profit and civil society organizations, academia representatives, and experts in the field of urban socioeconomic development and planning. How exactly did we engage? Which tools we used, and what were the key learnings that came out as a result? Talking about Moscow residents, we use an online citizens online survey. We use it as a tool to raise SDG awareness or to actually check the SDG awareness, but also to collect perception data, which is specifically useful when you want to go deeper into the analysis of how urban development resonates with lives of residents. So aside from perception data on different topics which are SDG related, for example, satisfaction on the environmental quality, access to education, healthcare, gender equality, the survey has highlighted this extreme problem that the general awareness of the SDGs, and more importantly, Moscow's commitment to that, is quite low. 65% of respondents have never heard about the SDGs before. So this was a number one problem that's been highlighted by the process. Another group of stakeholders we engaged with were local private companies, from telecommunication to green real estate investment. We used UN Global Compact as a partner to organize a seminar, an SDG localization seminar for our stakeholders. And with the help of this seminar, we have learned that the private sector in Moscow is already engaged in localization of SDGs. It propels SDGs and sustainable development in general via large-scale infrastructure projects, via corporate social responsibilities, cross-sectoral partnerships. We found out that the private sector is very interested in continuing to contribute to the SDG implementation process and to collaborate to expand knowledge and best practice base. But they do need a holistic vision and government's motivation and coordination of efforts within the sector. Another group of stakeholders were from non-for-profit organizations and civil society. This was very exciting as well. We used in-depth interviews to connect to this type of stakeholders, and the representatives really opened up. So we spoke a lot about the issues related to SDGs that the communities, those organizations are working with, experience in their daily basis. I have to say that organizations work with all sorts of diverse urban communities with specific vulnerabilities. such as young and adult youngsters and adults with disabilities and impoverished senior people, for example, or people who were victims of violence, and so on and so forth. So the number of organizations were willing to share the first-hand research to enhance the data sets that we were using for VLR in the SDG analysis, and that was very valuable as an outcome. Special elements like stories of success, best practices were also collected. We used lots of quotes and lots of quotes from the representatives of those organizations that jazzed up the VLR, made it even more so human, if you like. And of course, city departments and experts, those were very important stakeholders that we engaged with. These are the guys who have the latest, the cutting edge knowledge on the issues of SDGs in Moscow, and they're ready to share all the information. They were also very useful at checking our interpretation on how Moscow is doing in terms of implementation of SDGs, providing feedback, providing inputs, providing the latest facts and information on the programs that Moscow is already carrying out. So what were the general spin-offs, should I say? The participatory process was fundamental in developing Moscow VLR, not only by opening a dialogue for all stakeholders to share ideas on challenges, SDG challenges and opportunities, but also it helped to gather relevant local data for an enhanced SDG analysis. Engagement with such a diverse pool of city stakeholders resulted in an increased level of awareness of the 2030 agenda and Moscow's commitment to it. And this we do truly believe that this has created a momentum that the city government should grab onto, and we highly encourage to elaborate on. I will add one more element about social inclusion. So as a separate process from participatory one, we had this social inclusion check where the VLR for Moscow has been reviewed by an international gender expert. So she has been revealing gaps in the SDGs analysis that are important to be complete in order to really assess the achievements of certain targets and indicators from a gender equality perspective. And we have later on elaborated all the notes and all the comments into the VLR. We have then found new metrics, and actually we used a lot of data in that case that came from our stakeholders from the from NGOs in the civil society sector. So it kind of all rounded up, and one helped another until we got the final product. I will stop here and I will invite any questions from the floor. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Anna. And really sounds like, it was a very successful process. I would just ask you, I was really shocked to hear 65% of the people you interviewed had not heard of SDGs. Perhaps they just don't know that they are called Sustainable Development Goals, but perhaps have been doing interventions towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. How did you try to inform them, and what communication methods did you use to make sure that they understood about the Sustainable Development Goals and the roles that they have to play? And then the second question is about the perception data. I think perception is so important because perception to me becomes a fact. How do you, again, make sure that people know what the SDGs are and what they can do to work towards achieving these related targets? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very good questions indeed. So how did we go about informing people and actually reaching out to people with the Citizens Online Survey? We really truly used all the sources and all the channels available to us. And this is where participatory process and having all sorts of different stakeholders connected to it is very important, because for example, our stakeholders from NGO and civil society sector, they were willing to disseminate these survey amongst their communities. And by doing that, we covered the vulnerability groups very well with the survey. Within the survey, that's just one example. Within the survey, we obviously provided space with information about the SDGs framework, why this project is taking place, what is the objective of the project, and what role exactly do each participant play when responding to the survey. And at the end of the survey, we also left space or an opportunity for people to click whether they want to know more about the project, whether they want to get more information, or whether they want to get the results of this particular survey, or to know more about the VLR at the end of the process, or when it will be published officially, when it will be launched. The perception data, it was a very interesting process actually, because it was a challenge for us to, without going, writing long text of explanation of what exactly are we trying to get out of people, we had to squeeze everything into one question and give people an understanding that by answering that question, we're trying to find out how the overall urban sustainability process and urbanization affects their lives and their daily activities. But that's when teamwork comes handy, I guess. And yeah.
Wow, thank you.
I hope I answered it.
Yes, you did indeed. And now I'm going to open the floor. I hope I haven't hogged too much time, Jose. I think we can have a question and answer session for I think about 15 or 17 minutes. So are there any questions? I cannot see, so I'll ask for help to see whether there's anybody with a hand up. Question and answer session. Yeah, I'm opening it to the facilitators and, sorry, not the facilitators, the participants, if they can have any question, and we will direct it to the panelists.
To all participants, please don't be shy. We're waiting eagerly for your questions. Please raise your hands up, or if it's easier, write your questions in the chat. Thank you.
Can I actually, while we're waiting for questions to come in, can I actually ask on these participation by lottery? Because I've heard about it somewhere not so long ago for the first time, and now it's been confirmed by one of our panelists. I wonder, if you do not participate, if you don't come and participate, if you've been chosen by lottery, what exactly happens?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
No, nothing. We are just not coming. But we saw a lot of people who were phoning us and saying, very, very thankful for the invitation of the mayor. Wow, the mayor invites me, but I'm not able to come because I'm too old. I want to go on holiday on others. But to be honest, you have a response quote of about 20%. That's for Europe very normal. Austria was making this very early. They have a bigger effort at the moment because they're doing it longer. But now we are now doing it every year, or I would say every 6 months, in several processes. And we also have it in institutionalized, wow, very hard word, for the local Green Deal, where we have a citizenship forum, and all the citizen forum people there were also chosen by a lottery, and they are now making consultations with the councillors, but also with the experts for about 1 year, because this is a longer process. But I can recommend it, really.
Thank you.
May I? Only to remind that
Karina Casares is hand up, and Laura Querubin as well.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much for giving me the floor. I just have a quick question for our colleague from Colombia. I think it was Luis Saenz. who presented the framework with the 5 different areas covering different urban challenges. So my question is, how using this framework you managed to, let's say, move this big framework for SDGs that has been developed for a national level? How did you manage to use this other framework to localize the SDGs?
Karina, thank you.
If you can tell us a bit about the process, yeah, thank you.
Sure, Karina, thank you so much for your question. So when the SDGs were enacted back in 2016, and when the implementation process in Colombia began, what we thought was that there was a need to kind of simplify part of the agenda in order to have a easier engagement process with cities. As we know, the 2030 agenda is not only comprised by the SDGs, but by the Paris Agreement, by the Sendai Framework, Habitat 3. So we thought that it was necessary to kind of create a general framework for our work that could, to some extent, simplify the main challenges that cities in Colombia have, in order to have a clear idea on how to work and to create like these synergies between the SDGs that, as we know, is one of the main anchor points of the localization process, of the implementation process. So we came up with this framework, and as I mentioned, through participatory process and dialogue in different cities that we work with. And this has been useful in order to have a clearer and simpler engagement process with cities. We've used it as a way to also focus on specific areas where cities face more challenges than in other areas, and to study and to connect different points of different SDGs. The fact that we kind of join and put together SDGs creates these synergies, and also breaks this very sectorial approach that policy has in our cities, and has been very useful to engage in different conversations and also with different actors.
Thank you very much, Luis.
Thank you for your question.
I believe the hand of Laura Querubin is now up. Laura, if you may, thank you.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you to all the cities for sharing your experience in the participatory process. I'm from the city of Bogota, from the International Relations Division, and as Luis also mentioned, we're in the process of preparing our first VLR. We're very excited about it, and we're also planning how to include civil society and how to include the private sector and the academia in our process of elaborating our VLR. My question is for Anna Kuredova regarding the survey. So my question is, how do you select the people who you're going to send the survey to, and how many questions are in the survey, and how does how citizens reacted to the questions you are asking, and whether you can give us also some advice, because we're also planning on doing the same thing you mentioned.
Thank you so much for your question. It's been an interesting process in itself, making the survey and thinking about the questions, choosing the audience, choosing the channels of dissemination. So I guess I will start with the target audience. Our main goal was to cover all of the districts in Moscow so that we get a good representation for the city. For that, we chose the social network groups from the districts. Most of the districts in Moscow are covered by those groups. We started from there. We also, as I've already mentioned, used our stakeholders networks in order to disseminate the survey, by so covering the vulnerability groups. We used UN Habitat website and some of the media channels, which are specifically focusing on the urban issues in Moscow. So where the target audience is already sort of equipped and informed about the language of urban regarding urban sustainability, and maybe even the SDGs as such. So these were the ways that we used to disseminate the survey. In terms of questions, we worked around SDG SDGs and SDG targets. So based on that, we were creating sort of looking at targets and thinking, okay, I will give an example so that I'm more straightforward. For example, you can, there's an SDG on city safety, right? Urban safety. You can count how many CCTV cameras in the city, you know, you can give statistics of that, but that won't give you an idea of how safe the city is. So you can only get that from people by asking them, how safe do you feel by walking at night in your neighborhood? So this is the type of work we were doing, trying to turn questions so that we get the perception data. Usually the questions would start or would ask about the satisfaction level, satisfaction of access to education, satisfaction of access to health care facilities, for example. And we would measure that within the last 12 months. So we're not talking about the entire life of people, but we talk about the last 12 months. Is that it? Was there another part of the question? Sorry.
No, thank you. That's very useful. Thank you very much.
Good, no problem. Thank you for the question.
We have another question by Karina, because you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I don't want to be taking too many questions, but this is very important. I would like to also ask Anna Koledova. This is Karina from Partners for Review, by the way. Sorry for not presenting myself before. Anna, you mentioned that you had a seminar with the private sector. And my question will be whether you managed to identify some of incentives for involving private sector into the review process at the local level, or kind of best practices, because sometimes this is the group of actors that is more difficult to engage with. So whether you could share some experiences in that regard will be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, hi Karina, thanks for your question. Talking about the private sector stakeholders, we were very lucky to have a direct contact with UN Global Compact, which is a UN organization that deals with the private sector, and they work specifically on actually helping the companies to integrate SDGs within their corporate social politics. So just by connecting with them and asking, okay, how do we get to your network, and which companies do you think will be the most willing to participate? We already covered part of the participatory process, but then we also had our own criteria. It was very important that the companies are based in Moscow, so their HQs are based in Moscow, and the impact that they have is directly related to the city of Moscow. Nevertheless, I have to say that the majority of companies who participated in the VLR production, they have presence also on the regional scale and on the national scale, but with a HQ in Moscow. But this is actually, this in itself also has particular spin-offs, because if you talk about taking localization on a larger scale, outside one city, but onto the next ones, it's very important to engage with companies like that who can take the knowledge and take the processes further on to other cities where they're present and they work. In terms of incentives, actually, I think the best practices and the success stories of those companies, they work really well. So you provide them with guidance, you provide them with criteria again to share their best practices. Something that is, for us, it was the criteria was that it's related to sustainable urbanization of Moscow, that it's, it has some measurable impacts and effects, something that we can write about. And then you wait for companies to get back to you with their success stories, and then you integrate those success stories in the VLR if they hit all of the criteria. Those were two mechanisms that we used to bring private companies on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Allow me to take the floor back. I think in the interest of time, I think we want to close this panel discussion now. I want to thank very, very much my fantastic panelists. I think if we had 2 or 3 hours, we would have gone on and on and on to really discuss this subject. But thank you very much for your contributions. I'd now like to pass the floor to Edgardo Bilski, Head of Research at UCLG, and for your final remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think it was planned first, before the final remarks, to make the wrap up. Then I will invite my colleague Amanda and my friend Martino to make a very short wrap up, if it's possible, but highlighting the lessons and the takeouts that we have from this important and interesting exchange this afternoon. Amanda, do you want to speak first?
Thank you. I will try to be as quick as possible. Just to congratulate our speakers, and the session was really good. I think that's through the different example we heard, we had the different dimension of the interest of the VLR process. No, I think we see with Hawaii the importance of collecting data at the local level and producing that local government can produce themselves local data on the different challenges. We have seen with the example of Bristol and this one city approach, the importance to have cross-cutting approach between the different challenges. And that's something which is very linked to what we are defending with this human rights-based approach, is to have this interconnection between the policies and between the challenges. We heard from Mannheim the importance of the participatory democracy mechanism, and this one of the pillar of the social inclusion vision, and as a way also to renew the social contract at the local level. We heard from the Colombian cities maybe more the dimension of the accountability, how the VLR process can help local government to build accountability and to share skills within a network of cities. And finally, with the example of Moscow, also the importance of the multi-stakeholders dimension, also bringing to the discussion the private sector. So all these different experiences we heard are acknowledging the importance of the VLR process, maybe also showcasing, because we are also always all the time local government are doing at the local level and maybe making the advocacy at the international level. And this example of the VLR and the Agenda 2030 is showing the opposite, how we can bring the practices in the international discussion and bring the advocacy through international document at the local level. And that's an interesting way also to change a little bit the dynamic of collaboration around these challenges. I would finally just encourage the allergies who are engaging with the VLR process to really highlight the social inclusion dimension and challenges, the way they are addressing also the inequalities, because we need to have this information. We need to also make more visible the responses led by local government in this way, especially linked with the Agenda 2030, with this focus on how we can respond to social economic inequalities, but also to address the political rights. And that's something we heard also from our speakers when they are trying to get involved women with the different way they try to get involved with the citizens, is also having better involvement of the citizen as active participant to this process. Thank you very much, Edgardo.
Thank you, Amanda. And now, Martino, please, if you can share with us the lessons or the issues you want to point from this discussion.
Thank you, Edgardo. If you don't mind, I will not wrap up this specific session as Amanda has already highlighted some of the key points. I would like to share a couple of reflections together with you and the whole speakers about these 3 days of events that we had, so beyond this specific session. And it's good that we are doing this together, because it's It has been a long journey on not only the HLPF, but also the VLR, VSR days. In the past 3 days, I just asked the team to collect a bit of data, and we had some 475, 500 participants over 3 days, 68 speakers in 5 sessions. And this specific one has been the last, but not the least in terms of importance. And just to share with you a reflection by saying that last year, this period, we were publishing the first volume of the guidelines. And at that time, we were counting on 35 existing VLRs. The VSR movement was kind of start kind of growing. And now we have the second volume. We have some 100 VLRs existing by the end of this year, 15 VSRs. We have regional guidelines. Luis is working on creating a national one in Colombia level. So there is something going on. And this something would not be possible without your action, without your leadership. So it's not us doing VLR. This whole process is a local innovation. It's a local lead. It's a source of local leadership and local action. So I just wanted to say thank you, because if we are here, it's because of the work that you are doing at local level. And to conclude by, I'm thanking the speakers and of today for their very insightful and inspiring experiences, and to say that the question of social inclusion and participatory processes would be at the very core, hopefully, of our future work of research, guidelines, and support with regards to voluntary local reviews, voluntary subnational reviews, and the localization of the SDGs. So as it happened for the second volumes of the guidelines, we will come after you asking for your suggestions, asking for your documents. I know we have been contacting and harassing you with emails to share your experiences, because that's the most important value that we have all here. So thank you again, colleagues, and Edgardo, the floor is back to you.
Thank you very much, Martino. And really, it's an honor. I am going to talk on behalf of the CLG, but I think the colleagues from UNHabitat are sharing our last thinking about these 3 days and beyond. I think it was a pleasure and honor to have the possibility to have this dialogue and exchange with all of you, to learn each from the other and strengthen our common effort to enhance and to strengthen the localization movement during all these days, and particularly during these last 3 days, so the VLRs, VSR days that we are closing now. We have had a long journey during these 2 weeks, but I think we reached to put cities, local governments, and the localization agenda in a very high position. For example, the regular report on the HLPF, the IISD report put at the front today that local action reporting gets higher profile at the HLPF. This is very important, colleagues. The VLRs and VSR movement now are recognized by an increasing number of countries. The strategic alliance between UNHabitat, UCLG, the Global Task Force, and many other partners have shown how powerful we can be acting together to advocate for cities and local governments. We launched together the movement for the localization in 2015, and we are seeing it growing and actively growing year by year. We have a big challenge to redouble our effort to expand and involve more cities and local governments. We need to continue to work all together to take advantage of all our work, experience, and knowledge, to be in the capacity to continue to advocate for the involvement of local governments in the recovery process that is currently going on, and to contribute to the decade of acceleration of the implementation of the visions. Then I give you an appointment for the next year at the same place in the same channel. Thank you very much, and see you all, and thank you all for your support and for all this sharing experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.